Hi everyone, Stacy Whiter here on behalf of Campus Mortgage with a three-part video series on analyzing borrower ratios for USDA loans. Now just a quick reminder before we get started. This video is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal advice or used in place of USDA guidelines. Also, this video was issued on May 1st, 2018, and the information contained in this video is subject to change without notice. So let's take a look at the borrower ratios. So what the USDA is attempting to do when they have the underwriter analyze the ratio is they want to determine the borrower's ability to reasonably meet the anticipated total monthly obligations involved in homeownership based on their income. So the ideal ratios that USDA is looking for is when it comes to the PITI ratio. So PITI is the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, the sum of those items, and they're looking for less than or equal to 29% of repayment income. They're also looking at the total debt ratio, and for that, they want it to be less than or equal to 41 of the borrower's repayment income. So their ideal ratios are 29-41. They will waive that, or they do have some flexibility. They will go over those ratios in some cases. So let's take a look at when they will go over those ratios for a purchase. Now, it would have to be a manually underwritten purchase transaction, and the PITI ratio would need to be greater than 29%, but less than 32%. For the PITI ratio, and the total debt ratio would need to be less than or equal to 44. Or the total debt ratio is greater than 41%, but less than or equal to 44%. And the PITI ratio is less than or equal to 32%. Also, the credit score would need to be 680 or above, and one of the following compensating factors that we're going to go over would have to be documented. So again, for them to go over those ratios, the PITI ratio would need to be between 29 and 32 with a total debt ratio of 44 or less, or a total debt ratio greater than 41 but less than 44 or 44, and a PITI ratio that is less than 32. They also have to have a 680 credit score, and they have to meet one of these compensating factors. So let's take a look at these. One of the first ones would be a proposed PITI is less than or equal to what the applicant has already been paying for the most recent 12 months for housing expense. That would be a compensating factor. It must be documented on the credit report or a verification of rent. No late payments can have occurred in the last 12 months, and there's no flexibility on 12 months time frame. So to use this compensating factor, you have to meet these requirements, and it must be for 12 months or more. Another compensating factor would be savings or cash reserves after closing that are equal to or greater 3 months of PITI. These reserves must be documented to most recent bank statements or verification of deposit. Cash on hand is not acceptable. So that would be a second compensating factor. A third one could be that all employed applicants have been continuously employed with the current primary employer for at least 2 years. It must be documented on a VOE, and it does not apply for self-employed borrowers. Okay, so now let's look at refinances. So when will the USDA allow for flexibility and go over the 29-41 ratios when it comes to a refinance? Well, again, it must be a manually underwritten application. The credit score must be 680 or above. The acceptable housing payment history for the last 12 months must be greater than or equal to the proposed housing payment. The borrower must demonstrate conservative use of credit and post-closing cash reserves, which would be the difference between the current and the projected housing costs. So they would need to show that they have reserves in that amount. Continuous employment with current primary employer. So those would be compensating factors that you could use in those scenarios. All right, so in part 2, we're going to go into more detail on this, but thank you so much for watching. For more tips and videos, please visit campusmortgage.org to look for their weekly mortgage video tips designed for all mortgage professionals, including underwriters, loan officers, processors, closers, and post-closers. Have a great day. We'll see you next time.